Although the primal nature of horror lends itself to simplicity, many of the greatest genre films such as The Exorcist, The Wicker Man, Funny Games, Get Out, and A Tale of Two Sisters are revered because they're so ambitious, multifaceted, and thought-provoking. After all, most of those landmark movies incorporate elements such as dense commentaries on humanity, mind-bending twists, meta-references, and abstract imagery. In turn, they require deep concentration, if not repeated watches, to fully appreciate what they're doing thematically, narratively, and even visually. Now, before I go any further, there will be major spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are 10 hidden meanings behind confusing horror movies. Number 10. Triangle. Horror is no stranger to integrating time loops and/or non-linear plots into its chilling cinematic offerings. The 21st century alone has given us plenty of superb picks, including Last Night in Soho, Time Crimes, Coherence, Totally Killer, and the 2 Happy Death Day films. 2009's Triangle is no exception, despite becoming somewhat convoluted by the end. Triangle's circular storytelling revolves around a mother named Jess, who boards an abandoned ship with friends only to learn that they're being knocked off by a mysterious figure who may or may not be one of them from another reality or timeline. Throughout the runtime, Jess repeatedly experiences deja vu, and events are shown from different perspectives, and prior exchanges and occurrences take on new meanings. Naturally, the end result may seem too clever and enigmatic for its own good, especially since it's difficult to keep track of its irregular continuity and subtle but crucial foreshadowing and clues. After multiple watches, though, Triangle's emotional and troubling revelations become more logical and impactful, allowing its meditations on destiny, morality, and the consequences of one's actions to overwhelm like a tidal wave. Number 9. In Fabric. Peter Strickland's 2018 horror comedy In Fabric owes a debt to Dario Argento's 1977 masterpiece Suspiria. That's true not only for its use of vibrant colors and cryptic visions, but also regarding its initial story about a lonely bank teller who sold a murderous red dress by a coven of witches. At first, it tells a straightforward but engaging tale with a likable protagonist, classy camera work, eerie vibes, and even some pointed British satire of consumerism, materialism, and the retail industry. That being said, the film's continued use of slow motion, abstract shots, bizarre dream sequences, odd sounds, and inanimate objects moving on their own could make the film difficult to decipher for some viewers. Throw in the fact that the motivations of main antagonist Miss Luckmore aren't always clear, as well as the mysterious connections between Sheila's story and the story of new protagonists Reg and Babs during the second half of the film, and it's easy to see how In Fabric could leave some horror fans discombobulated. Ultimately, though, these curiosities contribute to In Fabric's distinctively delivered thesis regarding the destructive power of trying to adhere to perfect beauty standards and social professional etiquette. So there is plenty to glean from it. Number 8. Possessor. If it weren't obvious from the name, Brandon Cronenberg's penchant for sci-fi body horror proves that he's the literal and creative offspring of legendary filmmaker David Cronenberg. Although both 2012's Antiviral and 2023's Infinity Pool would also fit on this list, it's 2020's Possessor that reigns as his most intricately disturbing statement. As its title suggests, Possessor is about possessing people. Specifically, it follows a veteran assassin who takes over the minds of others to carry out her missions. Unfortunately, she struggles to control her latest host, Colin, due to a variety of things, including her damaged psyche and detachment from her family. Meanwhile, Colin fights to prevent what she's doing while maintaining the illusion that he's acting normally. What transpires is as gripping as it is grotesque, with the pair's lives and consciousnesses becoming increasingly entwined. Unsurprisingly, Possessor gets entangled in its purposely unclear plot and visual symbolism, with multiple memories, dissociations, and identities colliding as Cronenberg leans into Possessor's shocking conclusion. Yet the aftermath lingers with provocative implications and inquiries regarding fate and humanity's simultaneous need for and difficulty with complex and enduring human connection. It's a chilling, unshakable, and extremely valuable journey. Number 7. Videodrome. Speaking of Daddy Cronenberg, we're moving on to what's arguably his weirdest and dirtiest film, the wickedly prophetic Videodrome. Released in 1983, its premise is basic at the start, with television station president Max looking to profit from distributing violent pornography provided by a newly discovered satellite broadcast called, you guessed it, Videodrome. Along the way, he begins sleeping with a radio host named Nikki. For a while, it's not particularly difficult to comprehend. That is, until Nikki disappears and Max begins investigating the origins and purposes of Videodrome. What follows is a grotesque cerebral trip involving characters swapping places, tumor-induced nightmares, breathing videotapes, gross stomach vaginas, humanoid TVs, and exceedingly philosophical jargon about Videodrome redefining perception, connection, and existence. By the end, Max becomes an assassin with a gun fused into his arm and a determination to embrace the new flesh to Videodrome once and for all. In the process, the movie fulfills its eerily sophisticated, blunt, and timeless predictions regarding mankind's obsession with technology and boundary-pushing sadomasochistic entertainment. It's an archetypal David Cronenberg movie after all, so you'd be foolish not to expect something monstrous and multi-layered. Number 6. The Neon Demon. While it's streamlined compared to 2013's Only God Forgives, 2016's The Neon Demon exemplifies Nicholas Winding Refn's divisive fondness for stylishness and cloudy metaphors over narrative clarity. For most of its runtime, The Neon Demon is like Less Than Zero meets Mulholland Drive, painting a sinisterly satirical portrait of the predatory and vapid Los Angeles fashion industry through the eyes of an up-and-coming model called Jessie. Aside from ambiguous neon triangles, an inexplicably murderous and paedophilic motel owner, and another model licking blood from Jessie's injured hand, the movie is generally unassuming. That is, until about 30 minutes from the finale, when Refn doubles down on his multifaceted terror. After dreaming that the motel owner is sexually assaulting her with a knife, Jessie is murdered and consumed by Sarah and 2 other women, all of whom are clearly cannibals, if not witches, who may have been manipulating Jessie all along. Oh, and Ruby makes out with a corpse, because, well, why not? Although some of Refn's unanswered questions and bewildering montages remain elusive, his central messages about the cannibalistic nature of the fashion industry, including the competitiveness and insecurities of younger celebrities, are sufficiently thought-provoking upon reflection. Number 5. Titane. Both newcomers and fans of writer-director Julia Ducournau's previous outing, 2016's remarkable Raw, were likely unprepared for and left at least a little confounded by 2021's heavily symbolic and salacious Titane. Why? Because it's a relentlessly erratic and equivocal journey concerning a motor show dancer, Alexia, whose favorite hobby, being a serial killer, leads her to flee her home and adopt a new identity as the missing son of a lonely and desperate fire department captain called Vincent. Plus, Alexia crosses paths with Vincent after she commits parricide and gets impregnated by a car. Meanwhile, Vincent is addicted to injecting steroids so that he can retain his youthful and capable masculine physique. Oh, and all that happens before Alexia's body is torn apart from giving birth to a human titanium baby. Packed with intense carnage, outrageous depictions of objectophilia, and insinuations of incest, among other shocking moments and musings, Titane is undoubtedly a mysterious and uncomfortable watching experience. Yet, it's also a characteristically risque, fearless, and contemplative examination of unconditional love, gender fluidity, emotional isolation, and several taboo aspects of human nature. As such, it's up to each viewer to determine how Titane resonates with them, which is surely what Ducournau intended, at least somewhat. Number 4. John dies at the end. Despite the brazen spoiler inherent in its title, which isn't necessarily accurate, John Dies at the End is an unpredictable whirlwind of practical effects and theoretical ponderings from beginning to end. Told in a non-linear fashion, it finds supernatural slacker David Wong recounting mysteriously macabre and amusing events to an increasingly skeptical but playful reporter. In the process, John Dies at the End's dynamic editing, unrelenting pacing, and colourful personalities sustain its many intricate implications and ongoing uncertainties, including the influence of a shape-shifting dog, multi-dimensional monsters, and John forcing David to talk to him from the past via a cellular hot dog. In a way, it's what you'd get if Rod Serling mixed Evil Dead 2 and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World into an existential creature feature. John Dies at the End offers a lot to think about concerning self-actualization and the degrees to which people are responsible for how their lives turn out. Number 3. Altered States. Late English filmmaker Ken Russell was known for his uniquely provocative and extravagant aesthetic. Just look at his 1975 cinematic adaptation of The Who's Tommy, and his 1980 interpretation of Paddy Chayefsky's novel Altered States is easily among his finest works in that respect. As is probably evident from the title, the sci-fi frights of Altered States derive from the metaphysical investigations and reality-breaking revelations of psychopathologist Edward Jessup. You see, Edward is dedicated to understanding different planes of existence, evolution, and consciousness, as well as the traumatic passing of his father and various theological allegories. To do so, he and his colleagues mess around with sleep deprivation tanks and untested hallucinogens, resulting in Edward losing himself to his scientific studies regardless of the consequences to his relationships, psyche, and even physical health. Altered States is so persistently bizarre, unconventional, weighty, and complex that South Park parodied its final scene back in 2006. Yet repeated watches absolutely permit its absorbing commentaries on human nature and the meaning of existence to rise to the surface. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, or both, Edward's obsessive quest to comprehend history, spirituality, love, and his greater purpose is endlessly fascinating and relatable. Number 2. The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears. True to its name, 2013's The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears is extremely strange. Like in Fabric, its experimental approach conjures the 1970s work of Argento, as well as Rosemary's Baby, Possession, and Lost Highway. In fact, it might be even more artsy and impenetrable. The film tells the tale of a businessman who returns home to learn that his wife is missing. Naturally, he checks with several neighbors and the law regarding her whereabouts, but to no avail. All the while, he gets wrapped up in shadowy circumstances involving sex, violence, and deception. The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears is anything but conventional. Basically, it sacrifices a linear narrative and distinct answers so that it can take viewers through a fever dream of frightening tones, looping segments, surreal visuals, unsynchronized frame rates, nightmarish audio, and puzzle-esque shot compositions. With multiple watches, however, the film's obscure collage of sights, sounds, and actions yield a stimulating depiction of betrayal, mistrust, loneliness, and obsession. Ultimately, the filmmakers prompt viewers to ask themselves what they'd do if they were in Dan's shoes, and the answers are as rewarding as they are unsettling. Number 1. Braid. Braid is richly aspiring, original, and contemplative, especially for a first-time feature film. Centered around two wanted drug dealers/artists who attempt to deceive and rob their childhood friend, the movie consistently keeps the two protagonists, or antagonists, or anti-heroes, as well as audiences on their toes, as Daphne proves to be more cunning, violent, and psychotic than anyone could have imagined. Seriously, Braid gets downright bonkers as soon as the duo arrive at Daphne's labyrinthine mansion and are forced to indulge in Daphne's role-playing fantasy, in which Tilda is a sick child, Petula is a traveling doctor, and Daphne is Tilda's concerned mother. From there, the psychosexual horror thriller is a non-stop onslaught of peculiar games, sadomasochistic punishments, flashbacks, and revelations, delivered through time jumps, alternating color palettes, and shifting identities. Throw in a suspicious detective who's on Petula and Tilda's trail, and it's truly a twisted tale. But it's also one that has a lot to say about mental illness, childhood trauma, codependency, and how the mistakes we make as kids can haunt us forever. Honestly, entire studies could and should be written about everything Braid explores by the time its mind-boggling ending unfolds.